Hello and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Tag. I'm Gareth Smith, and today I'm joined by Jonny of Off the Grid, and also a special guest, Hannah Wilkes. How you doing, Hannah?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat to you both.
No, thank you very much for coming on. I do appreciate it's a little bit crazy right now, particularly with the Super Bowl, as you mentioned, the transfer deadline day, and all those other things. So we truly appreciate any time you give us today.
It's a
You must
wonderful
be.
week in my life where everything overlaps at once. It's transfer deadline day on Tuesday, Super Bowl, well, we go on Sunday, regular work in between as well with sports news. And then, just life and trying to get more than 5 minutes sleep. All the things. This is like a lot. It's fun though. I wouldn't change it.
It is, and bearing in mind, obviously, you mentioned going to the Super Bowl there, which is something I think that a lot of us all want to do. And obviously, congratulations for Ash for she won the 888 Superfan contest. A friend of yours there, Hannah. How pleased are you for Ash to get this experience?
Now, I know and love all four of them that were playing that game. I do. But Ash is my girl. Ash is my, I'm sure we'll talk about it. She's part of my gang. She's part of the Her Huddle crewage. So I am absolutely thrilled for her. I knew she had it in the bag because all season long during the regular season, her picks are always spot on. She's just got that instinct when it comes to this game. So I knew she'd do well. The fact that she basically had it wrapped up heading into championship weekend, I think it was only bonus points. If I think Sam had got all the bonus points, he'd have caught her, but that would be a hard one to do. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled for her. I do feel like my main responsibility next week is now forget Sky Sports. I need to make sure Ash doesn't pass out. I was worried enough about her when the Packers came to London and just whether she'd get through the week, keeping it all together, not just breaking down and crying and combusting with excitement. So now I feel like I need to just make sure she's breathing and hydrating and just remaining somewhat calm.
Yeah, no, and I remember that she got to ask Aaron Rodgers a question, and you could almost see the fangirl in her the whole time while trying to maintain the air of professionalism. It was. So Super Bowl is coming thick and fast. So what are you most looking forward to with this year's Super Bowl?
Oh my gosh, so much. And it's not even all on the field stuff. I mean, the matchup is great to start with. I think the conference championship, particularly the NFC conference championship game, was obviously disappointing. I think all football fans wanted to see much more of a game. But I think what we've got is the two best teams in football that have been really the best two teams throughout the season. There's so little to separate them. Both went 16-3, both finished top of their conference. I swear I saw somewhere, and I do need to double check this because I think I half heard it, that they even scored the same number of points throughout the season.
They did.
Could be wrong.
That was confirmed.
They did.
That was confirmed.
I knew I'd heard it somewhere. And then, when you're thinking, did I make that up? Because I swear that was a similar situation with the Rams and the Bengals last year. Anyway, so they are so evenly matched. You look at the Chiefs offense, number one, Eagles defense, it's so good. Just across the field, the matchups are amazing. I think there's two brilliant coaches. Goodness knows what Andy Reid's going to be coming up against that Eagles pass rush. Nick Sirianni, I think, has done a fantastic job in the last couple of years at the Eagles. I just think across the field and every facet of the game, it's a really brilliant matchup. And I think, and there's always the danger of saying this and cursing it, we said it a lot with the conference championship and the playoffs generally. When you look at these two offenses, we could have a really high-scoring Super Bowl. It's been a while since, we feel like we've had a really sort of, probably the last time when the Chiefs were against the 49ers is the last one I could think of where it was it felt like the points were really flying in and it was, it was that kind of game rather than a bit of a defensive tussle. So I think there's definitely the potential for a high-scoring thriller. Then we have Rihanna at halftime. Hello. I'm going to a Rihanna concert a week on Sunday and a Super Bowl. And then as well, what's really exciting just from a personal perspective, it's that I went out last year to Super Bowl 56 in LA, but because it was still COVID, everything else was back here from a Sky perspective. So it was just me, a producer and a cameraman. We had a great time. We did loads of stuff. And obviously we had Baldy out there and all the rest of it. but the whole coverage and the crew was back at Sky, of course, for very sensible like safety reasons. But this year, everyone's back out there, so it's the full gang is going. So I'm really looking for, because there's nothing like being at any. It's like the same we do the London games when everyone's there at a game, the whole gang is there. It's just a football loving family. So I'm really looking forward to that as well, just from a personal perspective. Although it might actually mean that I have to work even harder. We'll see.
I bet that's so exciting going to see, two of the biggest and probably the most noisiest fan bases as well, and the Eagles and the Chiefs. Rihanna at halftime. Yeah, I think the spectacle is just going to be, regardless of the football, it's just going to be, such an experience. So, yeah, very, very jealous.
It really is. And you know what? I'm already, as I sit here just thinking about it, I already know come the Monday and the flight home, I will not be able to wear earbuds or any headphones as well, because it's going to be so loud in there that we're going to have our like noise cancelling ones rammed in so we can try and hear each other on the coverage, which is a whole other challenge. And you just know it's going to be absolutely wild. I also am almost a little bit nervous. No matter who walks away with the Lombardi, the scenes after in Phoenix are probably going to be quite terrifying, because Eagles fans travel and they party, they drink, they celebrate. We know that they're greasing lampposts in Philadelphia last week, for crying out loud. I think they're doing it again for the Super Bowl, even though there'll be so many people just watching it in Bath. So I'm almost like a little bit like nervous and excited. And the Chiefs as well. They tailgate like no other team. They are loud like the team. I think it's going to be incredible. Really, it's deafening.
Did you hear about what the Eagles fans did in the divisional round against the Giants? Because they were the later kickoff, but they found out the stadium across the road was having a lacrosse game, which was starting earlier. So they all bought tickets to the tailgate for that. So that means they could drink for 12 hours instead of 4.
I love these Philly fans.
What a fan base.
The commitment. What a fan base. I think as well of all the people I know that are Eagles fans, they're all good people as well. I'm not saying Chiefs aren't. I just probably know more Eagles fans. And yeah, it's so great. It's gonna be so good, you guys. I have to like measure my excitement now, or I'll like do an Ash to self-combust before we actually get to the game. So it's just like one step at a time. We've got another 9 days. Everybody breathe.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now because I'm an Eagles fan. So don't feel obligated to pick the Eagles as who's going to win the Lombardi. No pressure or anything. But who's winning it and why?
Oh, I can't. It's too early. And you know what? For all the reasons I've already said, this game could really go either way. It's such a close one. There's part of me, because I find them really entertaining to watch. I think what they've done this year and last year to an extent as well is so impressive. I would love to see the Eagles do it, but I'm never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So, I mean, I do think it's a really great game to be a neutral at, because there's two great teams, lots of great storylines. You're going to see this sort of young Eagles team. A few of them have been here before and have won it before, like Jason Kelce, for example. But you kind of want it for them and for that fan base. But then the Chiefs as well. It's like, well, actually, if they are there and thereabouts year in, year out since Patrick Mahomes has been the starter, I'm excited to see him play and in a Super Bowl. And a second ring for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. It's just that sort of, I don't want to say dynastical because it is just the two, but it's just the consistency, which I think is so hard to achieve in this sport. So I'm sitting on the fence for the moment. Like, I would love to see the Eagles do it, but I also won't be surprised if the Chiefs do it, and I'll be kind of happy either way.
Yeah, no, it's completely understandable.
There's so.
Also, you're an Eagles fan. You're wearing red.
St. Helens rugby.
No, I think like you say, both teams. I mean, the GMs, Brett Veach of the Chiefs, Harry Roseman, they're both built on the back of difficulties over the last couple of seasons. The Chiefs obviously had a lot of question marks with the departure of Tyreek. They have had a brilliant sort of rookie class come through this year, and how he's gone out and developed such a great team for the Eagles this year. So yeah, I think both teams deserve a lot of credit. yeah, very on the fence, which is it's just going to be a
nice
great
place
matchup,
to be.
which is
It
nice
feels
to be.
comfortable on the
exactly.
fence, doesn't it? It's come join us up here. Sorry, Gareth. It's a good vantage point. The fence coming to this one.
It might not surprise you. I'm not sitting on the fence. I'm going that the Eagles are the better team across the board. The only difference between the two teams is Patrick Mahomes. That is literally the difference maker. If he's not as mobile as he usually will, our defensive line will be trying to eat him all game. So that is the thing for me. If that ankle isn't 100%, how will he get away from that defensive line of the Eagles that literally eats everyone?
I said this going into last weekend. That is a huge factor, but he's got an extra, it's 2-week window to sort of recover. Yeah. The fact that he even played the conference championship on a high ankle sprain within a week was a miracle. So I'm sure what they can do in 2 is going to be impressive. But I do also still believe that Patrick Mahomes on one leg is still better than about 76% of starting quarterbacks in the league. So that defensive line will get to him, but he can still make plays as he's going down. We've seen that historically. So yeah, it's exciting.
So we're talking about the highs of the Super Bowl, and obviously you being a Rams fan and last year seeing them win it. We've also seen what happens sometimes with a team the following year. So what has actually happened in LA this year compared to the previous years?
Everyone got hurt. It's that simple. No, it is. And people have asked me a lot about this, going, "Oh, it's because you went all in." It's because there's actually this year hasn't been because of going all in and sort of having to adjust. We haven't really had to adjust that squad too much from last year. Everything was set that you could have made a good run at it again, but everyone got hurt. When you're down to literally on your offense and then half your defense as well, your second and third string. That O-line was basically third stringers by the end of the season. So then Matthew Stafford is obviously getting hurt as well. There were times at the end of the season I was like, I don't know who that wide receiver one is meant to be. Like who is it? You know what I mean? It was just complete decimation on injuries, and you need luck when it comes to health. I mean, look at the 49ers this year, right? They had some bad luck with starting quarterback health. You get Brock Purdy in there, you're still rolling to the NFC Championship game. Then you have the worst luck of injuries in that championship game. You cannot legislate for that. You can be the most complete team in every other facet. But if you're depleted at one position through literally just a series of seriously unfortunate events, there's only so much you can, there's a limit to what you can overcome. So I do just think with the Rams, I'm not overly concerned because I think the talent is still there. But when Cooper Kupp's hurt, Matthew Stafford's hurt, Joe Noteboom, who was never going to be quite an Andrew Whitworth, but could do a decent job, he gets hurt straight away. You haven't got a running game. There was a whole thing with Cam Akers, but then he actually put up 700 yards over the season. So on balance, not the worst season, but then had no O-line to create holes for him to run through. Anyway, Aaron Donald is out by the end of it because at this point, why risk him? So yeah, I just think it was a lot of bad luck. I mean, look, I might be sitting here in a year's time and be like, yeah, it's the Super Bowl catching up with us. But also as well, I don't really care. If some team win a Super Bowl, they don't owe me anything for a while now. Look at all the teams that have never won one. Look at teams that get to that game and don't manage to win one year and year after year. So it was completely worth it because you did what you set out to do. This year was injury. We'll see where things land next year. But I think we might see, there's rumors about Jalen Ramsey being maybe traded away and all the rest of it. And I think now will be the time where the Rams have to start looking at who they can trade away and get some draft capital back, because now everyone else has caught on to the whole trading draft picks for veteran players. We've traded all us away. We don't really have much. We don't really have much there. And also the Lions are welcome because they're getting a really high first round draft pick despite having had a really good season. So aren't we good to them?
Yeah. Well, there's a few teams that have had that happen, isn't there? You also had the Lions definitely benefited. You had the likes of Seattle definitely have benefited from having a great season and yet still having a decent draft spot due to Denver not being that great. You mentioned Cam Akers there, which, to be fair, early on in the year, he looked like he was done. That second half of the season performance from him, he looked a complete different guy towards the end of the season. Not just because I had him in fantasy and he was therefore racking me points up towards the end of the year. which I will say again, I won the franchise tag league this year. I'm not boasting, but these lot are supposed to be experts in the game. And I was the rookie in the league, and I won it. But how much of a difference do you think he could potentially have next year in LA?
I am really intrigued to see what the Rams offense just looks like generally coming into next year, because the last couple of years we haven't had much of a run game. We haven't had a run game to sort of write home about since Todd Gurley in the 2018 season, really, and then that blooming arthritic knee, and it all just fell off a cliff. So I think because we're unlikely to be making any sort of big moves, and I think Matthew Stafford will come back. I think he's a bit banged up, but I don't think that's the way his career, like he'd want to leave his career, right? Just on the sign out her, like he wants to come back, and even if he is getting towards the end of his career, you still want to be playing and go out on a high, like JJ Watt did, and just Tom Brady just did. You know what I mean? So I think there's maybe going to be some changes to the way the offense is run, and maybe we look back to getting back to a decent run game, because that has been what has been missing significantly. Even making the Super Bowl run last year without much of a run game was a surprise, and sort of defies logic when you look at the Eagles so heavy on theirs this year. It's yin and yang. So I think we can hopefully expect some big things from him. I think it's a really interesting one, and we might never really know the sort of ins and outs of what went on with him, because at one point he was very much like looking to get traded. Trade deadline came, actually, no, it's fine. And then he had a really good season. So whether it was just something that him and Sean McVay needed to sort out, whether it was his usage, we'll likely never know. But whatever it was, definitely worked.
100% agree. What are your thoughts, Johnny, in relation to Cam Akers? Do you think he could have potentially a great year in next season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was it the game against the Broncos where he just looked a completely different player to what we've seen.
Was that the Broncos though?
Was it the Broncos? I can't remember.
No, I mean.
He means was it the Broncos that are the fault?
Was it the opposition? Was it being up against the Broncos?
He may have. Yeah.
Let's be measured here.
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is definitely. Going into talking about fantasy, he was one of the first sort of names I think off the board in terms of running backs who could potentially break out in 2022. Didn't really work out for him this year, but I think there's definitely the potential for him to, he was drafted really high, great sort of college career. So yeah, he's still young. There's no reason why he can't get the run game in NL working this year. I mean, yeah, I think it's. What are your expectations as a whole? I think for the Rams this year. I know you mentioned the 49ers, the similarities between how they've been quite banged up. I know a couple of years ago they had a season where, in the midst of reaching the NFC Conference Championships, they had that one year where they had so many injuries, they weren't able to compete. But then the next year they went on to get back to the Conference Championship. Do you expect the Rams to be in that sort of contention, or is it just about aiming for the playoffs and seeing where they go from there? Really,
we should be in the playoffs. We should be we should have been. Like I said, if those injuries hadn't happened with that roster the way it was, the Rams should have won the NFC West, even with the 49ers being as good as they are. When the 49ers went down to sort of third string quarterback, if the Rams had been healthy, they should have been, taking that division. And the Seahawks had a really good season as well. I mean, it's always a wild division, but I think that the Rams should always be in the playoff conversation based on those names that they've still got on the roster, even if they are aging out slightly. And I think when you've built the stadium they've built and you've made the moves that they've made, they need to be in and around that conversation. So, I mean, I'll be interested to see what happens in free agency, who, if anyone, we do sort of pick up in the draft. But I just think as well, when you've had a season like we've just had, you kind of just have to write it off and start again with a fresh slate. Like, there can be no hangover from this season. A Super Bowl hangover is permissible. Whatever that was, hangover is not okay. You've got to shake that off and clean slate. So a winning season, get back to the playoffs. That'll do me nicely. I'd like to enjoy watching LA again, because it's funny. Matthew Stafford joins, and it took me until December to realize I didn't need to watch like this on third down anymore. Like, he was probably going to complete a pass on third down. And I love Jared Goff, enjoyed watching him for the Lions this year, but it was stressful.
Yeah.
So it was really disappointing to have to go back to almost like, because obviously the Rams play a lot of the super late games because they're on the West Coast. And it's bad when even as a fan, you love the team. You're just like, I'm not staying up for this. I'll just watch the highlights, quote unquote. You know what I mean? You're just like, it's just painful and depressing. And you don't want that. I just want to enjoy watching this team again. So hopefully we'll get back to that in 2023.
No, I completely agree with you on the enjoyment sort of side. I'm a New York Jets fan, so it's been a little bit of the roller coaster the last few years. And
sometimes you want to feel good watching the team.
Exactly.
That's why you watch them.
Hopefully,
I'm not smug as an Eagles fan. I'm not smug as an Eagles fan at all. We have a tendency to be there the playoffs more often than not. But then, as I say, you got the likes of Howie Roseman, who literally just seems to do deals left, right, and centre. Like some of the deals he did, like taking CGJ for I think it was a third round, and he went on to be the interception lead for the NFL. Halfway through the season, the run defense was naff, so they bring in Don McAsoo. It's like he just seems to pull this out of the bag.
I still can't get my head around how you got AJ Brown. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the Titans GM, forgive me, his name escapes me, after they lost to you guys this season, the next day is when he gets basically fired for that trade. And you're just like, well, did you not realize it was a terrible idea before that, like 9 months ago when you did it? Just madness. Is it like he gave you guys him and with it a Super Bowl run on a platter, gift wrapped with a bow?
It's also the fact that it's the fact that we've got the number 10 pick in this year's draft as well. Despite the fact we could have a Super Bowl and a top 10 pick. It just how he does it year in, year out, it's just unbelievable. You always wonder if you do a deal with him now where you're sitting back and going, I've been swindled somehow. You think, I thought it was a great deal, but somehow this is going to come back to bite me further down the line. He just does it time and time again. And his roster building ability is just second to none to being able to rebuild. Because when you look at the difference between the Eagles that won the Super Bowl last time and being Super Bowl this time, it's a different quarterback, different head coach, different wide receiver core. A few of the offensive line are there, a few of the defensive line are there, but everything else is completely different. There's not much that is the same. So how hard do you think it is for other teams to match someone of like Howie Roseman? Do you think it's something that teams worry about getting into trades with the Eagles now because they think I'm being done somehow?
Yeah, do you know what? It's not something I'd really thought about in terms of like other teams' sort of cautiousness, but I think what it does show is you can get it right, but it's difficult to get it right, and it's really easy to get it wrong. I think as well, it's a really smart combination of things the Eagles have done because they've not been overly reliant just on draft picks, because the draft is still a lottery. I mean, look at, I've used this example a lot recently. Look at, sorry, Johnny, Jack Wilson compared to sort of Brock Purdy until he got hurt. You know, I said there's all the talk about how well set up the 49ers were, but put Zach Wilson in there and maybe see. You know what I mean? Like it just depends, doesn't it? So the draft is still a lottery. So I think there's not been a complete over-reliance, but there's been some very smart draft picks. And it's also just giving a little bit of the time and a little bit of the belief that, you know, you've got to stick with people and stick with systems for more than 5 minutes. There's a lot of impatience in the NFL generally. And there is smart trading, and it is smart free agency pickups, like bringing in a Don McAsoo, like somehow getting A.J. Brown. It's just there's got to be a little bit of luck there, because, you know, you never know if you can trade for someone and they could have the worst season of their career. But it is a masterclass in it. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know whether teams are so much nervous of doing deals with the Eagles, but I think it's such a copycat league that they'll be looking at what they're doing and trying to copy the moves. But some teams just don't do it as successfully. I mean, the Broncos have got a big season coming up. Look at what they have traded and bargained for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, essentially. Sean Payton is a great coach. Russell Wilson has been a good quarterback. If they don't have a Super Bowl run or in a good deep playoff run next season, the amount they have given away, players, picks, cold hard cash, you know, there's different ways of doing it. It's very aggressive. If it pays off, we'll be lauding it. Of course we will. But if it goes horribly, we'll be slamming it. So it's it's really interesting. There's so many different ways to build a Super Bowl winning team. We see that year in, year out. The Patriots proved that you could be a dynasty in the NFL when there's meant to be parity. The Bucks and the Rams, this is just recency bias. Bucks and Rams go all in, both pick up rings. The Eagles have just done a really smart, all-rounded approach. If the Chiefs, pick up as well, it's right. You've got your key pieces and the consistency of coaching. All the rest. So there's just so many different ways to do it. It's fascinating.
Very much so. So what would you say your highlights, if you had to pick, or highlights, I'll let you have more than one. What would you say would your highlights of this year and this season been?
That's really hard to pick. I think we've seen some really great matches, some great football. We've seen some terrible football this year as well. Let's be honest. There was a lot of parity early on, partly because of just terribleness. I think for me, the highlight, it always generally tends to be, it's the London games. The Vikings Saints was the first, was a really close one. It was such a thriller. It was so often those games can just be a bit of, like they can in this sport generally. That was such a thriller, and it was so exciting to sort of cover and just be around it. It was brilliantly. It was the most entertaining one I can remember covering in London, that's for sure. But then also being at the Packers Giants a week later, that was the first time I've been at a London game where it genuinely felt like a home game for one of the teams, because it felt like, I've not been to Lambeau, but it felt like Lambeau. It was so green and yellow and just Packers through and through. So that was just brilliant across the board. I think that, and I think just seeing those games back properly, because even just like the teams coming over like normal times, like even last year we still didn't have the access and all the rest of it because COVID was lingering. So yeah, just sort of being back to its best and back to the full pageantry, the full excitement, the players coming over like days in advance and being in and around and getting all that access. That's what we love it for. I think probably those for me. It's hard to pick like a single game or a single moment or a single play, because there's so much greatness throughout the course of the season. I did also love watching the Lions go on the run they did. I thought they were thoroughly entertaining, and that is so great to see when you just sort of see this team that has had so much go against it and see them almost make the Super Bowl. I mean, the Rams could have done them another favor, couldn't they, actually, if they had beaten the Seahawks and the not the Super Bowl, sorry, the playoffs. If the Rams had beaten the Seahawks, I think the Lions would maybe have just got in.
Yeah, they would have. They would have.
Yeah. So that's another reason the Rams let me down this season, actually. No, I just think it's been a really entertaining season from start to finish. I think it's a really exciting place as well in the league. When you look at, we've got the youngest quarterback matchup in the Super Bowl ever this season. When you look at Tom Brady stepped away, you look at the players coming through, it's a really exciting sort of young time in the league as well. So yeah, it's intriguing. Yeah, I can't pick a highlight. I really can't. Ask me again in a week and a half and I might have a solid answer.
No, and there's a few teams this year that have an half-turn corners as well, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, particularly under Doug Peterson, Brian Daboll turning the Giants round. It's been a hell of a season for turnarounds of teams. You mentioned Dan Campbell turning around the Lions. Is the Lions the one you've been most impressed with, would you say, about those turnarounds?
I'm not sure it's that I was most impressed. I think I was just probably most entertained and invested. I think that's got a lot to do with Hard Knocks, because you sort of watch that in the summer and you get invested. It's masterclass, isn't it, in making people fall in love with a team. So I think we all just felt a little bit invested in that journey. The Jags, especially from a UK and international audience perspective, is absolutely brilliant to see. And I think as well, you mentioned the Giants and Brian Daboll, and I think what both of those coaches in particular and at Detroit as well, all three of those, they're a testament to good leadership and the culture that how a culture can transform a team. Because the Giants as well, didn't bring in anyone new. There was no big free agency splashes or huge changes in terms of their roster, but the culture and the atmosphere. And actually for her huddle, I sat down with Beth Daboll and Marie Shane, who's Joe Shane, their GM's wife. And obviously Beth is Brian's wife. And they talked so much just to culture and team building and unity and just the general vibe and looking after the players and their families and their partners and just making sure that this is a place where people really want to be. especially after the last couple of years when they sort of couldn't do a lot of that sort of family involvement because of that blooming pandemic. So yeah, I think in all three of those cases, yeah, there've not been huge changes in terms of players on the field, but huge changes to the back room and the atmosphere and the mind, and then the knock-on effect that has on the players' mindsets. It's great to see Trevor Lawrence in a playoff game as well, or two. I'm losing track. Where are we? Who am I? I need some sleep.
And so Jonny mentioned there about Trevor Lawrence and the fact that he hasn't half-turned the corner. Do you think he's probably been one of your, in effect, most improved players for this year?
I think so. I think, at the start of the season, he was still quite inconsistent and showing the elements of, rawness that he showed in his rookie year. But, towards the back end where the Jags went on their super run to the playoffs, obviously put in the big win against the Chargers. I'd definitely put him in the category of, one of the best or most improved players. It's also been a great year for comebacks as well. Former Jet Geno Smith has had a brilliant year with the Seahawks. It's good to see CMC, Saquon, sort of getting back. They were the sort of players who, you fall in love with in the NFL. You want to see those sort of big plays, and those two in particular are, masters of the art. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more and more talent come in this year. I know there's looking at the draft, ahead to the draft, there's a lot of talent. The young running back Bijan Robinson, I'm looking forward to seeing the NFL. So yeah, look, it's just such a great league, such a great sport, and yeah, the Super Bowl's the iconic game that everyone sort of looks forward to, and you want to see the big play. So very jealous of Hannah obviously getting to go, but yeah, we'll be there in spirit.
I do have to remind people, it is a work trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very fun work trip, but it is hard work. I mean, it's better than every other week work, but it is hard work.
No, and it's not one of those where, like, obviously we're all jealous you get to go, but at the same point we appreciate obviously how hard, like, you have to, and how much it's taken you to get to that platform to do that. Speaking of platform and what you've been up to as well, Her Huddle is been back again this year. You've had some really good guests on this year, and there's an episode that's just gone out, or Sky have advertised it as of today, with Jamie from Good Morning Football. So how was Her Huddle going?
Her Huddle's going brilliantly, thank you. Very, very thrilled with how it's gone. Very proud of how it's gone and the reception it's had, because it was on NFL UK's social channels last year, and there was a real belief from both the NFL UK office and Sky that actually there was something here. So the fact that we could, the word blow it up sounds negative, but the way we could just sort of pimp it up really and turn it into a TV show and proper podcast this year has been really exciting. So yeah, Jamie Erdl, as it stands, is the last sort of scheduled TV episode for the season. But we'll see what we can do when we're in Arizona next week. So Jamie, it's out on Sky Sports NFL now, so you can download it. It's on demand and it'll be on the channel throughout the sort of next week. You can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. And it was brilliant. She literally hopped straight off the set from Good Morning Football. In fact, I was sat in here with the TV. And I said to her, I was like, I know how TV works, but just 5 minutes ago you were on that TV and now I'm talking to you through here. Wild. And she was so lovely, because it was obviously, as soon as she got the job, I was like, I've got to get her on Her Huddle. But also, it's a big job. It's a really high profile job. So it's very much like, let's give it a little while. Let her get her feet under that breakfast table and just, so it was really good timing to sort of reflect on the season and how it's gone, because she just slotted straight in there and made it her own straight away. But even though she never looked uncomfortable, I think you've seen her get more and more comfortable, and just the four of them really gel and they have such a great rapport. So yeah, brilliant to speak to her. Highly recommend it, because she's worked very hard. She's like climbed that ladder in sort of terms of like regional sports coverage as well, that is quite often the path in the States. And it's a really enlightening conversation as well, because she said herself, she very much could have continued to do the sideline, and she loved doing sideline, but she's got 2 little girls at home, and she just knew that they'd be fine, they'd be looked after, but it wasn't going to be the right thing for her anymore. So it was a really good move for sort of her that benefited her family, and obviously they came over to London, they went to Germany, so she's had a really good first season on the job. So yeah, highly recommend giving that. I am biased, obviously, but highly recommend giving that a listen. And also the whole back catalogue on there. So if you haven't checked them out already, we've got Amy Trask, MJ Acosta Ruiz, Katie Sowers, Phoebe Schechter. Obviously, we had to do a Phoebe special.
Yeah.
Beth and Brian Dable, although we did FaceTime her at one point, so I almost got him on there. Beth Dable and Marie Shane are on. So many brilliant, inspiring people, and it's really been amazing to be able to sort of tell their stories, and it's had such a positive reaction. So I'm very thrilled, very thrilled.
And as I say, Jamie had some big shoes to fill in the first place with Philip taking over the role from Kay Adams, who is obviously an icon. Particularly in the fantasy football world, where literally she has been really helpful for deciding who I used to be picking up half the time. So to see how she's come into that role and literally say made it her own, she hasn't gone on to try and be Kay Adams. She's been her own person, and her own personality really does shine through. So it's really good to see. Obviously, make sure you do check out her huddle, as Hannah mentioned. It can be found wherever you get your podcast and also on demand. So please do go and check that out. But thank you very much for your time today, Hannah. Completely appreciate you've given us your time today just before you jet off to Arizona for a quiet event with a few intimate venue, a small number of fans.
It's just a small low-key event, guys. It's fine, and I haven't currently got clothes and stuff strewn everywhere trying to actually figure out some packing, because I'm a very last-minute packer. And I'm trying. I leave quite early on Sunday morning, so I need to get organised.
But no, thank you very much for your time today. Highly appreciated. Obviously, Jonny, thank you very much for coming on as well. This has been the Franchise Tag, and I'm Gareth Smith, and we'll see you again soon with another special episode.
Thanks, guys.